Oh, Shivani, that was quite nice. So as I get started, I will tell the folks in the back that I don't have any slides up here, so I don't know if I'm actually controlling that or not. Can anybody help me out with that part? Okay, so I want to actually start spending some of the discussion today on how to really scale this stuff and what enterprises and businesses are going to do. And I'm going to share a number of different stories with you that I hope brings it home. I know being out here, and many of you have come from other places as well, you see the impact of AI and technology in businesses around the world. Can you just get the slides up? Oh, they're already up. Okay. All right, very good. So let's start first with data. Now, I grabbed just some points that I thought would help reinforce to all of us this era that we're in. Think about it, 2.5 billion emails every second. 100,000 cancer articles a year. Think about what an oncologist has to keep up with, the best in the world, and learning from their peers around the world. Lots of different forms of data. We see it with the Internet of Things. We see it in what businesses are doing. So it's really now about, frankly, how do we unlock that? And that's what I think is so powerful about the advances that have taken place that make now a time that we can apply AI to business scenarios. So I want to give you a perspective on the era that we're in. And we all know the benefit that Moore's Law had and what it did, what computing has done overall. And as we move forward and think about Metcalfe's Law and the impact that had on networks and businesses, and many businesses that have been named here that didn't exist and would not have existed without that. In my mind, when I think about it, I think about things like how it took very traditional businesses, banking, retail, and opened it up for people in so many different ways. So I would challenge you, in 1993, 1994, did you actually think you would do banking over the internet? I was speaking to Canadian Bank earlier this week, and we talked about the fact that at that point in time, the most that would probably be seen is you could have a brochure type thing that you could search. You could learn branch office hours, get answers to questions. You might be able to change your address. And now we just take it all for granted. So that's the impact that I think about when I think about the network impact, as well as companies like Facebook, Google, Netflix, etc. So now, affectionately, I'm going to call the next era Watson's Law. We all know that in the future, it'll be named based on what happened. But I want to describe it, because we're in this era now of knowledge. Just like what compute did, just like what network did, it's now about knowledge. And knowledge comes from this combination of unlocking that data, all of that data that we sit on in the world. 80% or so is behind the walls of businesses. So it's all about turning that truly into knowledge and thinking about the scaling effect that will have, just like these other two eras' scaling effect. I often think about it. One of our clients in Australia describes it. They're an oil and gas company, Woodside. And their head engineer describes it as one engineer can think like 1,000 engineers. That's scaling knowledge. And we're in an era that is possible. So as I think about scaling knowledge, one of the best examples that I think can apply and people can really understand the power of the era that we're in is some work that we've done with the University of North Carolina Molecular Tumor Board. They have taken Watson, trained it on cancers, understood from that how they could scale the knowledge of a renowned set of oncologists. And in doing that, they did a test. They took 1,000 patients. In 3 minutes, it identified that 99% of the information that the specialists had thought of as well. That's quite validation. That's validation on technology. Great. The thing that really makes it amazing and gives us all this opportunity of this knowledge era is the fact in 300 of those cases, it identified something that those specialists had not identified that was relevant. Not because the system's smarter than those specialists, but because it's now allowed them to be able to scale through a vast amount of data and expand their knowledge. So when I think about it, it's about transforming businesses across the board. You know, it can be anything from compliance situations, how to better understand the risk in your company, how to better understand specifications and guidelines as we come up on GDPR in just a couple of weeks. It's one more thing that applies to businesses around the world, not just in that particular example, businesses that are based in Europe. It can be as entertaining as media and sports, and how to bring to life a golf event or a tennis event or some other thing that folks appreciate from an entertainment standpoint. When you think about visual recognition, think about the opportunity with drones now being able to take video and pictures of equipment to understand, is the grade of rust on this electrical tower, on this cell tower, on this other oil rig, is the grade of rust at a point that it needs to be repaired or not? This opens up new opportunities. This transforms businesses. How can you better see x-rays? How can you find anomalies and what may exist there? Again, AI and the power of AI is opening up and transforming these businesses. So I want to take a few minutes and try to bring to life to you some of the Watson products that we use to do these things. I won't spend but a few minutes on it, but I think it's important. People are always asking me, well, what is Watson? How do I get it? What is it? And I think about it from the standpoint of it's about a couple of different application types, which I'll talk about, tools for people that are going to build their own and do their own machine learning and AI, and then industry specifications and specialized solutions as well. So I'll start with Watson Assistant. So this is about enabling businesses to have the assistant that they need for their employees, for their customers, in their brand, about their products, about their services. It's not about a personal assistant that helps me through my day, other than if I am maybe a call center rep or a field technician, and it can help me through that. Second one is about discovery. So when we think about those examples that I gave you in the first chart about the massive amount of data that exists in the world, most of the things on that list are really unstructured. There are things that we as human beings use all the time to be able to make decisions. But you need a system that can help you discover the insights that are in it, concepts, entities, relationships, themes across it, topics. How do you deal with all that? So that's really what Watson Discovery is about, is enabling you to do that. And then I know that there are so many folks out there that do it themselves and want to be able to bring their own customization for either what your business is, or maybe you have a special process that you want to add to. And so with that, we focus in from a studio standpoint to allow people to be their own builders. If I focus just a little bit further on Assistant, so we see these all along everywhere. I want to bring it home to what we see with our clients. There are clients that are trying to enable their employees. For example, Bradesco, a bank in Brazil, focused on how can they now take to their employees the information about their products and services so that their employees then can do the best job possible of representing those products and services to their clients, to their customers. That's what they started with us on. BIA is the name of their assistant used internally, and now they're expanding out externally to their customers. And that's so successful, they're now expanding out to a youth version, because we all know that the next generation is what we're also trying to attract from our businesses. It's just one example. Trained there on what their products and services are as a part of it. So we focus on things to enable you to bring your business, your brand, your process to your customers, to your market as a part of it. And in doing that, Watson Assistant includes in it guided learning, guided recommendations to help you be able to provide a better experience, because it's important for your customers, your employees, to be able to accomplish what they came to do. It's a part of it. And then we focus on the fact that your data in your business is yours, and you don't really want your competitor benefiting from what your data is. So as a part of this, it's also about how your products and services are understood and are not mixed in with your competitors' products and services, and more importantly, how your clients interact with you, how they have that conversation with you through the assistant, that's not mixed in with what your competitors may be doing. Now, I did also want to just spend a minute on Watson Studio. And the reason is because as I said, I get so many questions about, well, can I bring my own? Can I do this with TensorFlow and other open source things? Absolutely. The answer to that is absolutely. So Watson Studio is really that tooling environment to enable builders, whether or not they're developers, data scientists, domain experts, that set of roles that come together, that people collaborate around a project, for them to be able to do that, to bring with it the things that we've done from a Watson standpoint, where we've already trained and brought the service to you, alongside what you may want to do in open frameworks, all underpinned with a catalog that understands models, data, the relationship between the data and the model that was trained, versions of it, lineage, etc., as well as access. Because the more we talk about scaling this in businesses, these things matter. So if I step back, the thing that is consistent for us in how we focus Watson on different solutions for clients is that it is important that we do techniques, use techniques to be able to learn more with less data. Because when I go back to 80% of the data is in your walls, most of that is not going to be labeled as training data ready to put into an AI system. So we focus on the things that will enable you to unlock the value that is in what are your engineering reports, etc. So that's one. Another one is about protecting your insights. So I mentioned this when I was talking about Watson Assistant. I cannot stress enough, think about the value of the data in your company today. There's value for that down the road that you haven't even begun to think about how it will be used. It's an asset. You don't want others to have that asset, because they could then disrupt you, compete against you based on that asset. So it's important that we do that. And then the final thing I would say is we're really focused on how do we put it in those workflows, those business processes. So how do we enable that oncologist? How do we enable that oil and gas engineer? How do we enable that call center? How do we stick it in the things that run your business today? That's how we're all going to scale the impact of AI and see what some of the video was talking about earlier, where it was really talking about here's the impact this can have on businesses going forward. All right, so a couple of examples from around the world to help you think about what others are doing. I'll start with Forum Engineering. Forum Engineering is located in Tokyo, and I'm not real familiar with labor laws in Japan, but I can tell you that there are some dynamics by which when you're trying to hire someone, you can only get certain information from them until you get into an agreement of having hired them. So Forum Engineering is a staffing organization for technical roles, all sorts of technical roles, and they do about 14,000 projects a year. And they have all sorts of analytics that they use to try to match people. But one of the key things is what they could learn by better understanding what the company that needs to be staffed and the candidates, to better understand the two on topics, on things that might bring together skills that would have been highlighted in different ways. So they use Watson to help them be able to do that. And as a part of it, they've now gotten it down to, instead of 6 different turns to be able to find a match, that's gone down to 1, which is a huge thing when you think about what I would consider a very regulated process. This has helped them deliver better value, and ultimately they believe it is allowing them to grow in the market and be much more competitive and have leadership role there. So the second one is Autodesk. So Autodesk, based not too far from here, CAD engineering systems, they will move into a subscription model. They operate in something like 143 or so locations around the world. You go to a subscription model, you now need 24/7 help. So what did they do? They said, listen, we're going to start that by bringing in a virtual assistant to help be able to do that. And that's what they did and started with Watson. And they started with 5 use cases, very simple, common things. They've grown to well over 40 use cases now. They've been very public about the fact that they've been able to take what would cost them $15 a call down to $1 or less a call. So they've got the savings from that. And they just keep expanding it and expanding it and expanding it. Their customers actually request it. In their case, the assistant is called AVA, Autodesk Virtual Assistant. And their customers request it because their customers now know that for the topics that AVA understands, in some ways it can be easier because you're now just communicating with an assistant that understands what you're trying to do and can give you back and guide you through the process, etc. And then the last one I wanted to highlight is Orange Bank in France. And I wanted to highlight them because they are a new digital bank with only a digital interface of a virtual assistant. So there's not a phone number to call, there's not a place to chat with an individual first. You start it all with their virtual assistant that's powered by Watson. And then if, of course, it's something that needs to then have a specialist, then it can be transferred to that. In their early days, they've already seen that 50% of the end-to-end inquiries are handled automatically without having to bring in a person. Some simple things, but this is just how industries around the world, different languages, different geographies, different cultures, are benefiting from this. Now, I want to also spend a few minutes talking about what I think is important for us to think about in the broadest sense. So, we need to, all of us, as we are technologists developing more and more algorithms, more and more technologies around this, and then folks that are using it, I think we have a responsibility to think about what the social good is. We happen to have with our IBM research group, we happen to have a program we started 2 years ago, AI for Social Good, where we do a number of different projects. In fact, we've done 19 projects in the 2 years. We finished 19 projects with 23 fellowships, and over 90 top scientists have participated. Basically, it pairs IBM research scientists and engineers alongside academic fellows, students, etc. Just to give you a couple of examples, one of the ones we've worked on is with opioids. such that there can be prescription indicators to try to mitigate the risk of addiction or hopefully reduce deaths and from overdose. Social good. Another one is around food. In New York, St. John's Bread and Life is the agency that feeds some of the poorest people in New York City. That's one of the projects, is working with them. And with AI, we've streamlined the supply chain so that now they're able to feed more efficiently. And it's about reaching broader than them because they then share these best practices to other similar agencies around the world. Lots of different examples, more projects underway, but something that I think we have a responsibility on as we impact the world for ourselves and for the future. So speaking of the future, I want to end on some thoughts about where things will be in 5 years. 5 in 5. These are led by IBM researchers in a variety of different topics. I know there's a number of things on the agenda here around not just AI, but blockchain and others. So you'll see some of that coming together here as I go through these examples as a part of it. So the first one, nobody likes knockoffs. Crypto anchors, blockchain, together with blockchain, will unite against counterfeiters. So let's just take an example. Let's think about the fact of being able to embed edible ink in a malaria pill such that someone would just be able to touch it with the least drop of water and determine by the color whether or not it was fraud or not. It's going to change a lot of things. Second one, hackers are going to hack until they encounter latest cryptology. So in this one, think about the example where consumer credit reporting for analyzing credit reports, or frankly producing them as well, could determine credit scores without decrypting the personal information. Now, apply the same thing to medical. So think about the stakeholders that exist around doctors, lab specialists, radiologists, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if they can share medical records and get to the information they need about you without being able to see your identity, that's going to change how medicine can be done. The third one. So we know our oceans are dirty. AI-powered microscopes, robot microscopes, may actually be able to save them. So think about having microscopes in bodies of water that could then monitor plankton. And now talk about the Internet of Things, having AI running locally on those microscopes in real time to identify the threats that may exist, to help us as a world have a better visibility into our water source that we're so dependent on. The fourth one is about AI bias. We hear a lot about this. Frankly, it's likely to explode. But the only thing that will ultimately survive are those unbiased AI models and solutions. So think about the ability for machines to now be able to apply human values and the principles that we use in decision making and now be able to apply that. We've got work underway where we can already detect bias within systems and determine whether or not they're fair or not, and then how to be able to adjust that to get them back to a point of fairness. And then the last one that I'll just mention, quantum. You know, if you think about it today, quantum computing is it's like a researcher's playground. They can enjoy so much in it. The art of the possible is unreal. In 5 years, though, it'll be mainstream. That's what people will be studying in college and using for what seems like very routine business applications, and it will ultimately unlock even more value going forward. So with that, I'll end. Thank you for your attention. I hope that in this few minutes I've been able to share with you some fundamentals about why I came to talk about how Watson is scaling AI, what that's about, how important it is for all of us to think about the massive amount of data in very differing forms that we have that we can unlock, how folks can do it today, start small, but the art of the possible is just ahead of us, and together we can really do some good for the world. Thank you.